If you want talk, games, and fun all rolled into one, well, you've come to the right place. This is The Game Show, where host Bradley Clarke and his special guests talk about the world of television game and competition shows. But Bradley's guests aren't here to just talk. They came to play a game as well. What will today's topic be? What game does Bradley have planned? There's only one way to find out.
It's time to start the show.
You heard the man. Welcome to The Game Show. And here's your host, the Bradster himself, Bradley Clarke.
It's so great to hear that music. Thank you so much, Austin Angelo. I'm Bradley Clarke, and welcome to another exciting episode of The Game Show, the talk show all about the world of television game and competition shows. I'm Bradley Clarke, and I'm so happy to say that the show has reached another milestone. This is the 35th episode of The Game Show. That's right, clap it up. Episode 35 is here. As the creator, producer, and host of this show, it is such a thrill and honor that I get to do what I love every time I press the microphone on button. So to all the listeners, thank you for being a part of this 35 episode journey, but I still have plenty more episodes to do after this one. So The Game Show is going nowhere. Now you're probably wondering who's on the guest list for episode 35. Well, it's only fitting that my special guest today has a connection with the number 35, as he was one of the 6 captains of the Jeopardy All-Star Games, a tournament created to celebrate the 35th season of America's favorite quiz show.
The Jeopardy All-Star Games. Team captains will include Colby Burnett, the second winner of the Teachers Tournament, and so far the only one to go on to win the Tournament of Champions. With his winnings, Colby bought homes for both himself and his mother. He is still in education and now works as a college and career counselor at Chicago's Spear Academy.
As the audio clip just said, Colby has a Jeopardy statistic nobody else has. He is, so far, the only Teachers Tournament winner to go on and win the Tournament of Champions. Colby has also competed in the Jeopardy Battle of the Decades, and recently he made it to the finals of the Jeopardy All-Star Games and placed 3rd, along with his teammates Pam Mueller and Alan Lynn. I am thrilled to have yet another All-Star Games competitor join me on the game show, so please welcome the namesake of Team Colby, Colby Burnett. Colby, welcome to the game show.
Hey, good to be here, Bradley.
Well, it is such a treat for me. I can still remember watching you compete in the Teachers Tournament back in 2012. I was a sophomore in high school, and now fast forward 7 years, I get to watch you again on the All-Star Games, and now we get to chat about your Jeopardy career.
Good thing I have a pretty good memory because it's been a while, but it's always nice to talk about these things.
Well, if you ever need some factual assistance as a Jeopardy superfan, I know a thing or two about the show, so never hesitate to ask.
I'd like to hear what you have as a fan, and I'd like to tell you what I can as a contestant.
Perfect. And I should let you know that this is actually my 35th episode of the game show, and it's only fitting that I have you on as my special guest for episode number 35, since that number is very symbolic to all of the All-Star Game competitors.
That's a wonderful coincidence, and of course the 35 referring to 35 seasons and 35 years that Alex has been host, and of course the final answer to the last Final Jeopardy that I got right. So that does mean a lot.
That's right. So we're going to take a trip down Jeopardy memory lane. We're going to talk about your 4 tournaments that you were involved in. And then later on, I like to play a game with all my guests. So for you, Colby, it's no different. I've created a Jeopardy-themed game just for you.
Okay. Well, I'm game.
That's what I like to hear. So Colby, are you ready to talk about Jeopardy?
Absolutely.
Then let's get into it. So I want to start off by asking, where did your love for Jeopardy first begin?
It started at a fairly young age because Jeopardy, the Alex Trebek hosted era, is only a year younger than I am. So it's been there my entire life. And I've always had a natural inclination to go learn more things and try. I was blessed with a very good memory. And I used to grow up reading encyclopedias. So when I was 4, my mom bought a set of the New World Encyclopedia. I mean, it was primarily for my older brother, but my older brother wasn't too into books, so they just became mine. And the outlet for most of that information, other than being somewhat obnoxious as a small kid about the stuff that I knew, was this show. And it came on every day. And the things that I didn't know, I was inclined to go learn more about, or I could watch it with my mom or my grandmother, and they would know things and I would know some things. And, there'd be an interesting clue that would come across every now and again. And I didn't watch it really regularly until I was an adult. But you think about a trivia show in America, that's the one. And it's always been there. And I distinctly remember I sent a letter to Sony Pictures Studios when I was 7 or 8. And I said, hey, you know what? Why isn't there a tournament for little kids? That'd be great if you had a tournament for little kids. And, of course, they send back this answer, ostensibly another postcard that gets signed by Alex Trebek, which, as I've now seen his handwriting, I know that was not the case. But they said, you know what, we might do a tournament for little kids one day. And when you're an adult, you should try out. So not only did I try out as an adult and get on, but they also decided to go make a tournament for little kids. So, they've got that going.
And by the way, for the young listeners, the encyclopedia was this book where you learned facts before the internet.
That's true. So imagine Wikipedia, except it was edited by 20 random people rather than everybody.
I would say that's the perfect way to describe it. Now, did growing up watching Jeopardy and learning so much history from the show ultimately influence you to want to become a history teacher?
I think I always had a knack for information. It's just that personally, teaching history, that was just an outlet. English was always so much interpretation, and I know that history is full of interpretation as well, but it always seemed more subjective, and I'm not too big on subjectivity. I'm just not that creative a person. And so the idea is creating these narratives and crafting them out of fact. You think about Napoleon, what is history? History is a set of lies that is agreed upon. So the idea is, well, what do we determine to be true? What facts do we have to back up our interpretation of that truth? And how do we craft it so that others believe us? And I'm not going to give that into sophistry, but it's what basically propelled me from just learning random things to crafting narratives. And the idea is that, well, I know how to do this. How can I inspire other people to do the same? And I had a very strong series of history educators, especially in junior high and high school, and it just seemed like the best outlet. So where can I take all this information and where can I get paid to dispense this information and make sure that other people know how to access that information too? That's my backstory and how those two worlds met.
And becoming a teacher is what led you to winning a teacher's tournament on Jeopardy.
Yeah, that was my pathway through. And I'll be frank, I was not a regular watcher of the show at the time that I appeared. So I was the third teacher's champion, and I had no idea that there was a teacher's tournament until the contestant coordinators told me that there was a teacher's tournament, and that if you were, you should definitely tell us because we might have you on this tournament rather than the regular show. And just to go back into that story, I took the online test, did well enough. They had a casting call in Chicago, and I went to that casting call, and I think about a lot of the other people who tried to be on the show, and they've had to go far across from their homes to go to these things, and I literally hopped on a bus. And then I just went into this hotel and this conference room. I didn't think anything of it. But they mentioned that, hey, we have a teacher's tournament. So all you teachers, tell us specifically, and we might give you a call and have you be on that show. And sure enough, this happens in May, and I get a call in August. And they say, is this Colby Burnett? I'm like, yeah. Are you still a teacher? And the first thing that popped in my head is, why is somebody asking me that question? Is this a gig that fell through sometime in the past? So I answer yes. And they say, well, these are the contestant coordinators at Jeopardy. We'd like you to be on the teacher's tournament. And I said, okay, I will go do that. I will go check in with my principal to make sure that I can take the time off. And it just went from there.
Now, you said at the time that you hadn't really been a regular viewer of the show. Was this your first time ever taking the test, or had you done it previously?
It was my first time taking the test. So I just reached a point where this was my late 20s, and it's about the time when the average contestant's age is in their late 20s, early 30s. So a lot of friends that I had made through playing Quiz Bowl in high school and college, they had made appearances on the show. And sure enough, I'm friends with them, and they post on social media. And the time to take that tournament came. I signed up. I answered, I think, 49 of the 50 questions correctly. And the idea was they brought me back, and I made an impression, an appearance on them that they wanted me to go do their show, and I jumped at the chance.
Now, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but for the All-Star Games, Jeopardy created captain spotlight videos so that the viewers can get reacquainted with these 6 captains and their accomplishments on the show. Now, they actually made a mistake with your video because it said that you were the 2nd Teachers Tournament winner when, as you mentioned, you were actually the 3rd Teachers Tournament winner.
Yeah, so let's see if I can do this. So the first winner was Charles Temple. Charles is from Ocracoke Island, like the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And then, because there was a dearth of 5-time champions my year, there were 2. So there was Patrick Quinn from the suburbs of St. Louis and myself. And so Patrick clearly shot his episodes, and they aired before I was on. So we were both teachers champions in the same taping year, and I believe the same calendar year, but Pat had me beat by a couple of months.
So when they first told you about the Teachers Tournament and how you could participate in that, were you still hoping to maybe be on the regular games because of potentially how much more you could win?
Absolutely not. Money is money, and they treat teachers very well. So if you're on the regular show, you're getting out there and you're putting yourself up and you taking time off of work. Well, that's entirely up to you. And if you have a bad day, well, you go home with $1,000, which will pretty much cover most expenses for spending 2 days out in LA. And I'm a bit of a pessimist, so I'm very good at trivia. Other people are very good at trivia too. So let's just say I'm not on the teachers tournament. And the thing about the teachers tournament is they pay your way out there, they pay for your hotel. Everybody walks away with at least $5,000 and a nice gift for your classroom. And so I definitely looked at a guaranteed $5,000 minimum as a better deal than just going and hoping that you have a great run. Being involved in the trivia community to the extent that I have, I literally know people who are much better at trivia, and they've either had a bad day or they've run into a more solid player on that day. Like literally a very good friend of mine, a person who's won this online trivia league that we participate in. You know, he's waited his entire life to be on Jeopardy. And what happens in his first game? He gets to go play Alex Jacob. And I'm just like, well, that stinks. There are people I know who are much better at trivia, and they've won 1 match or 2. There's a national bar trivia circuit. So the person who took out Dave Madden, she won once. And clearly those 2 people are very, very good at trivia. The person who took down Ken Jennings, she won once. And that's just too much variation for my standards. Like, I would gladly go in and say, you know what, if I completely tank this, I'm going to walk out of here with $5,000 and a trip to Southern California in the fall. And yeah, it never hit me that, oh, maybe I'm letting all of this money go. I just wanted to be on the show, and I took the first opportunity that I had, because what was I going to do? Was I going to say no? I think that any person should be happy to be on the show in any capacity. So no regrets about that at all.
You also got a lot of Jeopardy publicity because the show interviews you for online videos and you get to appear in promos.
That's true, because the general consensus, people who don't know who you are as a teacher, they'll at least believe that you're a good person and that you're trying to do good things. And even the people who don't necessarily like me can say, well, at least it's an honorable profession that I engage in. So, yes, in the publicity, the idea that you're not doing this only for yourself, you're doing this for the institution that you represent. And to have that as a background, and I believe that especially because the school I went to was the school I taught at. So I already had that background and that story to tell. The idea is, as an alumnus, that you're not only representing what you're trying to accomplish as an educator, you're representing what you've accomplished as a student. And it's a very compelling story. And people like compelling stories. And it can't just be good at trivia. Everybody knows somebody who's good at trivia or is good at trivia themselves. And it was really helpful. And whatever elements of myself that came across on camera, they were heightened, because I can guarantee you people conversed with my students and with my colleagues who were my former teachers. They say, hey, is this guy really like that? Is this some sort of front? I'm like, no, it's not. Colby Burnett that you got was exactly who I am. It might have been turned up maybe 10, 15, 20%, but that was me, and that is me. And the idea is that I had a stage that brought that out, and maybe a regular game of Jeopardy wouldn't be enough time to do that.
For your first game of the Teachers Tournament, it was not a runaway going into Final Jeopardy, as you had a $5,800 lead over your second-place opponent and a $6,000 lead over your third-place competitor. But what I find interesting is that you only bet $201 during Final. Was that because you didn't feel strong about the category of plays, or you figured you already had enough money to secure one of the 4 wildcard spots if you didn't win?
A little from column A and a little from column B. So if it were a regular game, I would have bet enough to win. I felt confident enough, and, frankly, the Teachers Tournament questions, they're at a bit of a lower pace than your average game of Jeopardy, and certainly lower pace than a Tournament of Champions. But most of it is column B. $20,000 is enough to get you into pretty much the second round of any tournament, regardless of the outcome. And should I fail, $19,599, that's great. And I distinctly remember talking it over with other teachers, because we were a very open group. All of us are talking like we're colleagues. Because technically we are. We're all in the same profession. And I talked to Mike Faribaugh before we knew we were competing. And the idea is like, hey, if you get caught up in a game where you have close to $20,000, you're not going to go all in and try to kill the game. $20,000 is enough. And sure enough, while we were pseudo-strategizing, I wound up playing Michael, and we both pretty much go for our targets, and we leave it at that. Because really, in that round, there's no functional difference between getting $20,000 and winning. So we were fine with that. And I really wish that Diana, because she was in third place, she was also going for that. And she got called out for using wait-in rather than waiting. But if she had simply written waiting, then we all would have advanced. And that would have been a pretty great game. And being involved in that and having it not be a runaway and having it be relatively close, that was compelling television.
And speaking of compelling television, you won your quarterfinal match, you won your semifinal match, and you made it to the finals. And lo and behold, who was one of your competitors in the finals? Michael Faribaugh. Now, was it fun competing against him because it would be another chance to beat a really good competitor? Or was it more nerve-wracking competing against Michael in the finals because you knew firsthand how good he was?
Oh, definitely the latter, because this guy kept up. Out of all the other teachers there, I would say he was the second most intimidating in terms of his natural talent. And then I already played in the semi against the person that I felt the most intimidated by, and I beat him. So I think this might be easy. And then, no, it will not be easy. This person is going to play you to the bone, and you're probably not going to run away from him until I did. And I really lucked out in that regard, too. But let's just say I was happy that he made it to the final, but that means I have to try to beat him 2 more times, or at least an aggregate of 2 games 1 more time. So, yeah, I was kind of hoping for an upset. And then I remember watching his game, and his game had a relatively ridiculous final Jeopardy that was just a wipeout for everybody. And maybe he'll get taken out. Like, nah, he hung on. He played the game completely correctly, and now I have to go deal with this guy 2 more times. I was happy for him. I was not happy for myself to be in that situation.
Well, speaking of Final Jeopardy wipeouts, the first match of your 2-game final, nobody got Final Jeopardy on that one either. You went into Double Jeopardy in second place, but because of your wagering, you actually took a $600 lead over Michael at the end of Final Jeopardy for Game 1. Now, I've always been very curious because you have an interesting way of figuring out how much you're going to bet. You're a very conservative wagerer, I would say, as I've watched you throughout your tournaments. And it always seems like you think about how you're going to wager. When you're wagering, what goes through your mind?
All right, so I'm glad you used that term. It's not even conservative, it's reactionary. I think that I size up my opponents more than I register my level of confidence in the category. And in this case, I saw European authors. And I just basically looked at that and I said, this could be anything. The fact that that category was that vague made me incredibly fearful. And I figured that no matter what, tomorrow is another day. I didn't do so great. I stumbled out of the gate at the beginning, and I could come back in the second game. I know that I'll play a better game in the second round after playing against the same two competitors, playing against Kate and Michael before. So I just threw up my hands and said, well, 10 grand is enough. And if they go all in and they nail it because it was easy, I deserve to lose, and that's fine. But I had a feeling, especially a first-day final in any tournament, tends to be the hardest one of the lot. And when I saw that on screen, I had no idea what was going on. So when someone mentioned Stieg Larsson, I didn't know who that was. I didn't know he was Swedish. I mean, I would presume that someone named Stieg Larsson would be Swedish. I didn't know he was dead. And I didn't know that the Millennium series, I did research afterwards, I didn't know those books existed until that point. I literally went on Wikipedia to figure out what were they talking about after we went home. And that feeling that, oh, this is going to be really difficult. And if it's not difficult, okay, well, I need to go try to erase a $10,000 lead. Which, given the way I played the second game, I could have. But I looked at that and I thought to myself and I said, no, like if it's European authors that should be cared about, this can go from, about 1400 to now. And so I'm not going to do it.
And you didn't just do well during the second game of the finals, you dominated because you finished Double Jeopardy with $20,600, which was a $12,000 lead over Michael, meaning you had a lock. So all you had to do is write the number 0 and you would be the $100,000 Teachers Tournament winner. However, you didn't do that. You actually wagered $1,929 during Final Jeopardy. And surprising to me, you actually gave an incorrect response to a clue about the U.S. Constitution.
Oh, yeah, I definitely heard from that because my U.S. history teacher was now my colleague, and he definitely let me have it when I got back. I wasn't focused on giving the answer. And the reason I wagered $1,929, it was the year that my school was founded. And I wasn't thinking about the Constitution. I wasn't thinking about American history at all. I knew I could bet 0. And then I kept running the math through my head so many times. Can I bet $1,929, get it incorrect, and still win? And once I found out that I could do that, that was my sole focus. I should have tried a bit harder, but I would have frankly whiffed on treason. Sad, I know, but there are gaps that show up. I'm not a U.S. history teacher. I'm a world history teacher. It's been a while since I've sat down and explained the tenets of the Constitution to students, so it is what it is.
By winning the Teachers Tournament, you qualified for the next Tournament of Champions, which took place during the same season. Now, for your first Tournament of Champions match, you went up against a 5-day champion in David Menchaca and a 6-day champion in Joel Poole. Were you nervous that your other opponents had a bit more Jeopardy experience than you did?
See, they've had more experience, but they hadn't been in a tournament. So I felt that I actually had a better understanding about how to play that game under those circumstances than my competitors. And one thing that I have to really thank Michael for is being a good competitor, because having to play him 3 out of the 4 games that I played meant that I didn't really have time to take a day off. I wasn't able to run through not great competition. And, I don't know the specifics of Joel or David's run, but it's quite possible that they had some duds in those 5- and 6-day runs. And I also had the added advantage of playing the game more closely to our tape date than they did. So I wasn't afraid at all. Really glad to go in the first run. And also, one of those consequences of not really watching the show is that I don't necessarily know the intricacies of their run. I mean, I have access to the same basic statistics that they would, but I came in that quarterfinal round, and it's like, well, these are 2 guys who are fairly good at the game. Like, I am also fairly good at the game, and I think I can hold my own. And then I did. And we hit that Final Jeopardy about MoMA. I literally went to MoMA. The air date was in February, I think, and the tape date was in January. That summer, I went to MoMA for the first time. I literally look outside, and it's like, oh, that's some street in Midtown Manhattan. And it was a model of it. And it was a model of, I think, the courtyard outside. And it's just like, I've seen that courtyard. Like, I've literally been in that courtyard. You could put me as a tiny model inside of that diorama, and it would all make sense. I was the only one who got it right, and I would have won whether I did or I didn't. And so I felt good on the buzzer, and it was a very good way to ease me back into playing again.
And that's a prime example of how life travels can work to your favor on Jeopardy!
Definitely go out and see the world. I'll just be frank, I did not grow up with a lot of money, so the only way that I had access to these places were through books. And now that I have the time, well, less time than I thought I would have, but now that I definitely have the financial capabilities of doing so, yeah, go out and see places. It becomes a whole lot more internalized when you're actually there. So if someone were to ask a question about the Night's Watch, well, you'll remember more about the Night's Watch when you're actually in Amsterdam and in the Rijksmuseum looking at it because it's larger than life. And being in that courtyard in Midtown Manhattan in the summer of 2012, if I hadn't been there, I would have never gotten it. It just worked out in my favor.
And you made it to the second round. And the first time you actually bet large was in your semifinal match of the Tournament of Champions, where you bet $16,401. Now, was that because not only was it a close game going into Final Jeopardy, since you only had a $2,800 lead, but was it also because Russian history was the category and you realized, wow, world history, that's my thing?
Yeah, that was play to win. Don't leave it up to chance, because in that particular game, Stephanie could have played spoiler if both Dan and I were incorrect. If Dan were right and I didn't bet enough, I would never live that down. And that was really the moment where I thought, okay, I can depend on myself here. It's world history, so I teach about Russian history from, the Tartar yoke up until the present day. So I had this feeling that I'm going to nail this. They might throw a little bit of a twist at me, but this is my game to win. And I'm actually sort of surprised I was the only one who got that right, because there's this policy that started and it failed, and they quit doing the policy after 4 years, but they wanted to do it for longer. This is clearly early communist era Soviet Union. Well, this looks like a 5-year plan. I used to summarize Russian history is 800 years of pain. That's what I tell kids. When we go into that, it's 800 years of pain. It can be summarized as we tried something different and then it got worse. So that came really quickly to me, and I was like, well, I don't have to worry. For the first time, I don't have to worry about what anybody else is doing, because I know I've nailed it.
Well, luckily, the one time that you did bet big, the outcome went in your favor because you made it to the Tournament of Champions finals. So in the finals, you were battling 7-time champion Keith Whitener and 5-time champion Kristin Morgan. Now, for the first game, you dominated, especially during Double Jeopardy, ending with a runaway score of 22,200. And going into the second game, you had a $17,400 lead over second place, which was Keith, but it definitely was a rough game for you in the beginning, because at the first commercial break, you were actually in the red at negative 400. So even though you had backing from the first game, wasn't nerve-wracking being in the negatives to start out game 2?
Oh, yeah. I was getting out buzzed on things that I knew, and then I was like, all right, just get your timing down, make sure everything goes, do not blow a $17,000 lead. And since both Kristin and Keith had to come out swinging to try to catch me, I knew they would just get in each other's way. So I reared back a little bit, came back from the commercial break and said, hey, just play your game. All you really have to do is make sure whoever is in front has fewer than $8,000 more than you do. Sure enough, we go through this, and when Kristin hit her daily double, and she went all in, and it's like, all right, that's great, because I have a commanding lead over Kristin. And if Keith would have hit that, then I would have had to start sweating. But I took one of the daily doubles off the board, and then Kristin got the other one, which was ideal. And really in the first game, Keith sort of took himself out of the first game by blowing 2 of those daily doubles. And that made life simple for me. I ran up that score in the first game without a single daily double. And the reason that I pulled that off was Keith missed 2 of them. So he was gun shy after that. So he wasn't as quick on the buzzer, and neither was Kristin. And I won't say a walk, but the way that I explain this, if you follow football, it's prevent defense. Just get a daily double off the table. Take all of the major points off the table so that your opponents can't catch up.
Although you finished the Jeopardy round in third place, you did bounce back nicely to finish Double Jeopardy with $14,400. Although you were in second place, once again you had a lock. And not only that, the category for final was 19th Century America. Was it at that point that it sank in that you were about to win $250,000?
Pretty much. Having that run in Double Jeopardy, I think I got most of the clues in the bottom 2 rows. And I think that a lot of my choice buzzes were clues that only I would have gotten out of the group. So, yes, it sunk in that I won $250,000. And after winning $100,000 3 months prior, yeah, that's huge. That is life-changing money that's coming in. And the idea is that, like, look, I know I did it. And no matter what, it can't be taken away from me. Money's nice, but the prestige of competing and doing well and having to stand on my own merit, it means a lot. And it's a good thing to be a Jeopardy champion in general. But the idea that, hey, I did this on a national stage, representing myself, representing my background, representing my school, yeah, it all sunk in that moment. And all of the stupid things that I read and learned and competed about for years, I'd done it for free for half my life. And now I get to walk out of here with $250,000. So that is an amazing feeling.
And not only that, your Jeopardy career wasn't over, because next season you'd be invited back for the Jeopardy Battle of the Decades, which was held for the 30th anniversary of the show, and you were part of the 2000s group of players. How excited were you to, after 2 huge wins, get to come back and possibly win another $1 million?
Yeah, so the prospect of competing against the likes of Ken Jennings and Brad Rutter, and now I'm in a weird spot because now I know that I'm playing against people who are better at this than I am. And at that point, I'm just happy to be there. So I know I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to go take this trip down to Southern California and understand that was back to back to back. So 2012, 2013, 2014. I've had the ability to play Jeopardy 3 different occasions in 3 years. And, well, I know I'm the most newly minted champion of this run. They brought back Keith and they brought back Stephanie Yass, who definitely, I think she had the longest women's run before Julia Collins. So well, I know these 3, and then it's just like, oh, you're going to play against some of the best of the best. And I remember I got drawn against Celeste DiNucci and Tom Nisley. And I didn't know about Celeste run, but I knew that Tom was victimized by Roger Craig's dramatic pause. I bet it all. Get it right. Pick the next clue. Dramatic pause. I bet it all. And they're like, okay, well, this guy deserves another shot because that was a gut check. But I knew these were good players. Everybody there was a Tournament of Champions winner or a Tournament of Champions finalist, with the exception of Ken Jennings and Pam Mueller. And so all of these people are very good at what they do. And I just said, hey, I'm just going to try to do the best that I can. And tournaments are my bag because I've never played regular Jeopardy. And we're going to talk about that first match. That was definitely a barn burner, and it was very similar to the game that I played in the first round of my Tournament of Champions, where the person in third place couldn't catch me. The person in second place was relatively close, and I looked at that category and I said, I'm probably not going to know this. And that was a game that I had to win. And I basically looked at the category, and it was opera and literature. It's just like, well, these questions are hard, and Alex himself came in and explained that these questions are hard. We were able to see some of the 80s and 90s competitors because they were all there in the same weekend. And, yeah, I said, I'm not going to knock myself out of this tournament by getting something wrong. I want to get beaten. If I'm going to get beaten, I'm going to get beaten. I'm not going to beat myself. And played a decent round. I think I held the lead most of Double Jeopardy. But I think at the end I was only up by $200. Bet $199. And I said, well, the person in third can't catch me. So it's up to you. I would rather bet that my opponent gets this wrong than I will get it right. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
And your smart wagering against Celeste DiNucci is what qualified you for the tournament because you made it into the quarterfinals of the Battle of the Decades. And in your quarterfinal match, you went up against the legendary Chuck Forrest from the 80s participants and Dan Pawson from the 90s group of players. And while you performed decently well, especially in Double Jeopardy, it was Chuck Forrest who ended up edging you out.
Yeah, and Chuck was definitely playing for the victory, but those categories that I saw, like those were very not Colby categories. And Chuck and Mark, they're great players, but yeah, Chuck definitely outplayed me from pillar to post. And I figured that was his win, and I will try to cling towards a low-end semifinal berth, and that's exactly what it was. I was the 9th qualifier, or the 4th non-winner qualifier, the 9th person in.
So, as you said, you made it into the semifinals just barely, but unfortunately, your Battle of the Decades journey would end in the semifinals when you were beaten by Roger Craig. Were you disappointed that you didn't make it to the finals after winning the last 2 tournaments that you played in?
I mean, I got to play in the semifinal against Roger and Pam, but no, because I knew that this was higher stakes and this was better competition, and I did okay. It wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be, but given those categories that were up there and the competition that I had faced, I did fine. Because I really figure, all right, even if you got through, are you really beating the likes of Ken Jennings and Brad Rutter in a final? Probably not. So I wasn't disappointed at all. The only thing is, in that semifinal, I could have snuck in and gotten whipped by those two if I'd only could distinguish Prince Edward Island from New Brunswick. I get to literally tell people that I've lost tens of thousands of dollars by not knowing the difference between 2 Canadian provinces.
Well, speaking of Ken and Brad, 5 years later, season 35, we come to the Jeopardy All-Star Games, which is your most recent appearance on America's Favorite Quiz Show. You were one of the 6 captains alongside Ken Brad, Julia Collins, Austin Rogers, and Buzzy Cohen. When you were contacted by Jeopardy, asking if you wanted to be a captain for the tournament, what was your initial reaction?
Okay, so they didn't ask. They just said, these are your 6 captains. And so we knew who the field of players were going to be. And so, okay, of course, Brad's going to be a captain. Of course, Ken's going to be a captain. They're probably going to have Buzzy be a captain because he's the most recent Tournament of Champions winner. And then they make Austin a captain, which is kind of weird because he finished 3rd in his Tournament of Champions. And then it comes down to Julia and myself. And it's just like, well, I wasn't betting on this. I was really holding out that I could be this sort of mid-round draft pick that becomes an important member of the team, but I'm not steering anybody to victory. Like, I will gladly get on the Ken or Brad train and ride that to hopefully hundreds of thousands of dollars. But when they said I was a captain, I was a bit nonplussed because I don't get to play with them. I get to play against them, and I have to go make decisions and evaluate the entirety of the field and hope that I didn't play too conservatively or didn't reach too far and that my teammates are pretty good. Yeah, that was a lot to take. But then again, in that release, they sent out what the prize pool was, and I thought, once again, being a bit pessimistic, if I stink up the joint, I walk away with a third of $50,000. So after taxes, 14, 15 grand just for showing up, yeah, I'll be there. And so that was fun. I got to go to Southern California in the fall and the winter again. So I'm just looking at all the positives.
So they basically just said to you, you're a captain, here you go.
Yeah, that's exactly what it said. And I saw that, and it's just like, oh, okay. Well, try to step up your game, try to pick good people. And I did, but really the team that had the best players in Jeopardy, those were the teams that won. And we were definitely the also ran there. We were definitely the show of win, place, or show. But I was just happy to be there, and we were very scrappy. As a team, if I could use one sort of overused cliche to describe us, we're scrappy because we didn't have superstars. There's a top tier of players, and I'm not in it. And not to speak ill of my teammates, but I don't think that they would consider themselves in the absolute top tier either. But we're able to hold our own. We know how to make good decisions, and we just moved from there.
As a viewer, the most fun moment of the tournament, for me at least, happened before the All-Star Games actually began, and that was the draft where each of the 6 captains got to select their 2 teammates. You were the first to select one of the 6 envelopes from Alex, which contained the order in which the captains got to choose their players. You ended up getting the number 5 and the number 8 spots, but going into the draft, how much preparation went into you determining who you wanted on your team?
I was on my Mel Kiper Jr. out there. I had a big board. I literally drew a big board 1 through 12 of the people that I wanted on my team. And basically there were tiers. I thought there were 4 can't-miss picks. Nobody's going to doubt you for picking this. And I was really hoping not to get 5th. And when I wound up picking 5th, I took a deep breath, and I had a decision between an incredibly good player, Larissa Kelly. Larissa Kelly should have won her Tournament of Champions. She should have made it to the semifinals of the Battle of the Decades. But there were 2 mental errors on her part, and this is what happened. She's a history PhD. Now, granted, she's a Latin American history PhD, and those were questions about European history, but those were things that I thought she would absolutely knock out of the park, and she didn't, and that's what held her back. And it's just like, well, she's made some errors in the past, and this is a very high-stakes tournament, and I think the questions are going to be more difficult. And you know what? I'm going to go with Pam because Pam has a very extensive knowledge base, and she's proven herself in these tournaments, even if she's not the most intimidating player. We'll get through to the next round. That's kind of what we do. So both Pam and I have, once again, only played tournaments, and I went with the best tournament player that was left on the board. And of the remaining players, when it came back to me, and Dave Madden and Marissa Kelly were the only people that were going off the board, and just straight up talent, who's the best player left, it was a toss-up between Seth and Alan. And I thought that Alan had a better run. He made it to the final of his TOC. And also, because both Pam and Alan live in Southern California, the idea is that they will be able to be in contact with each other more thoroughly, and we'd have a better vibe as a team. And also, there's a personal connection there. Pam went to Loyola University Chicago while I was at Northwestern, so I've known Pam for the better part of 20 years, so, hey, I know exactly what I'm getting. If I pick someone else, I don't know exactly what I'm getting. So I went with familiarity, and we did what we did.
Did the three of you spend a lot of time studying and preparing for the All-Star Games as a team?
Not as much as you think. I still have a job, and I had to go live my life. We got together several times, especially over Christmas time, because Alan's a grad student, and I'm a school teacher, so we had more time then. We didn't really have time before then to meet up. And Pam's a researcher, so we all have pretty demanding schedules. So to sit down and study for the sake of getting good at Jeopardy, we didn't really do that all that much. We did have friends of ours proctor a series of Final Jeopardies just to see how our knowledge base extended and how well we were able to think laterally, especially when it comes to these more difficult Final Jeopardy clues and daily doubles. But that was pretty much it. A lot of it was understanding old questions and reviewing those and seeing what tended to come up in these high-stakes tournaments. But also, really to our advantage, Pam and I, all we do is play high-stakes tournaments. So we already had that innate knowledge of what was to be expected.
Your first match was against Team Buzzy and Team Brad, and it's safe to say that the first game of the two-game match didn't go according to plan as you ended the game with nothing. Now, I remember you talking during your team strategy session videos about switching things up for the second day if the first day wasn't as successful. So, did you end up actually changing your playing positions for the second game after the conclusion of game one?
Oh, yeah, and it was a question of buzzer speed, and Pam was not keen on going into a Final Jeopardy ever again, which is fair. So I wanted to be on the buzzer the entire time. However, I proved to be the most proficient in Final Jeopardy. So Pam doesn't want to go near Final Jeopardy, so that means that we're going to shift the order so that Alan is playing single Jeopardy and I am playing double. I mean, not in that game, but just in general, if we survive, and that I would take final. And part of that was pride. The idea is that I picked this team. If they give me anything with which to work, I am going to guide this team, and I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to hopefully get this right. And whatever happens, happens. But the idea is that we know it's not in our hands. We knew that with what we had, we were playing for 5th place out of 6. And that's all we needed to play for to survive. We knew we weren't going to catch Brad's team. We knew that Buzzy's team would probably play fairly consistently and conservatively, and they would do enough to get by. And sure enough, that's exactly how it goes. And we were in the first taping, and so that just meant that we had to sit on the Wheel of Fortune studio for 4.5 hours while we waited for the other match to conclude and our fate to be decided. So, yeah, that was pretty nerve-wracking. But when we switched things up, the idea was, look, I'm taking final no matter what because I'm really the only other person that's confident enough to do that. And whatever happens, happens. And we did okay. We put up 11,000, and we effectively doubled up. Sure enough, the Final Jeopardy is history, and it's women in history. And they mentioned Haymarket. They mentioned a woman who was there. Well, you put together Chicago, an anarchist, and woman, it's Emma Goldman. And I see that clue. I think I clapped my hands in anticipation and enjoyment, and I just wrote down that answer, and that was it. And I'm glad that we set it up that way.
And Game 2 proved that a 2-game match is never over until it's over, because both Team Brad and Team Buzzy, who dominated Game 1, flustered in Game 2, Brad in Double Jeopardy and Buzzy during Final Jeopardy, when he bet it all and responded incorrectly.
They played very well, and Brad had a not great day on the buzzer in that Double Jeopardy round. And part of that, I think he was resting on his laurels because he knew that my team wasn't going to catch him. And he probably felt confident enough that he didn't necessarily need to get to the final, because a team that has himself and has Dave Madden and Larissa Kelly, they could probably win that wild card game if it came down to it. Buzzy was going for the win. And Buzzy did the absolute right thing because he couldn't lose to me. And if he got it right, he would have been able to defeat Brad's team.
Team Brad was the winner of the first match, and you, Pam, and Alan had to wait until the end of match number 2 to find out if your score was big enough to earn a wild card match spot. Did you think 21,800 was a good enough score to get one of the 3 spots in the wild card match?
Oh, absolutely not. We needed a team to wipe out in one game for us to have any sort of chance. And given the teams that were there, I didn't think it was plausible. So I'm, once again, a very pessimistic person. So I didn't think it was enough. And I felt like, hey, we're just walking off to our doom. Did the best that we could. Hey, I get to go sit in the audience. I get to wake up a little bit later in the day for the shoot. And I'm just going to focus on the bright sides of this and hope that all the teams do well. And then they make an announcement. Their game concludes. And first, they announced that, of course, Team Kim just slaps around the entire field like we expected. So, number one, we needed that to happen. We had a feeling that Ken's team would dominate, and they had to dominate in order to force the other teams into a position where they can make the same sort of error that we did, the same way that Brad's team and then Buzzy's team dominated us. So we hear that. All right, that's great news. And then, all right, and joining them is Team Austin. I was like, all right, hold up. If any team were to flame out and fail, it should have been Team Austin. Team Austin is just full of high-stakes gamblers. And they made it. I was like, all right, we're done here. And then joining them is Team Colby. And it's like, first off, I'm overjoyed about being there. And then I'm like, what happened with Team Julia so that they couldn't make it? And I wasn't going to ask around because that means they had to wipe out in one game and they had to play poorly in the second. And I was wondering, like, what happened? And sure enough, you watch the show and things happened that put us in a position where we just weren't the worst. And all we had to do to be successful at that stage was not be the worst.
And I must say, your dance moves were superb.
Yeah, superb. That's because they cut out about 2/3 of that, and that was very gracious on their part. But yeah, bursting out of the seat and then immediately running up towards the camera and dancing, that wouldn't have come automatically, but given how far down we were and how much we needed the powers that be, how much we needed other teams to do things in our favor, yeah, I was overjoyed. And here's the idea. Hey, it's another day to compete. And if we don't win, that's fine, but at least we're not going home round one. That is sort of the background of being a Jeopardy contestant. Like, number one, man, don't embarrass yourself. And I'm not saying that losing in the first round to that field would have been embarrassing, but I felt a lot happier that even if we lost that wild card game, that at least we got that far. And, hey, I've lost Jeopardy plenty of times, but I've never gone out round one. And I'm glad to keep that streak alive.
You were competing against Team Buzzy and Team Austin, and going into Final Jeopardy for Game 1, it was close, but your team did have the lead with $19,600 thanks to a $17,000 showing from you in Double Jeopardy. And I've got to say, finding both of those daily doubles and answering correctly was very crucial to your team's game.
They were, because we were in last going into me playing the game. I was a bit shook, and what I knew was, okay, Alex Jacobs is going to be on the buzzer the entire time. And Alex Jacobs is going to dominate every time that he is on the buzzer. We're not going to beat him. But what I can do, I figured it would be a captain's matchup in Double Jeopardy and it would be a captain's matchup in Final Jeopardy. Buzzy's a bit shaky on Final. So I knew that Alex would be compelled to just kill off the game. Well, I'm not playing Alex. This is really the only time that we're going to rack up points without Alex being there. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to kill it. And I looked back at the stats and I felt like, I really busted their tails. No, I didn't. I got 10 right, and I think Austin got 8 and Buzzy got 9. Those two daily doubles, I won't say not the only thing separating us, because I think I answered more high-valued questions than they did. But provided that one of those two would have picked up a daily double, we might have been sunk. And Alex Jacob would have killed off the game. He would have been more conservative in his betting strategy. And, yeah, getting those 2 daily doubles and getting a couple of high-valued clues, it felt like I was in the driver's seat. I think I stopped during the taping and during one moment where they said, hey, you're in the lead. And I was like, holy crap, this is the first lead that we've had the entire tournament. I just need to go bathe in this for a second. And, yes, getting those 2 daily doubles, absolutely crucial.
Now, after a triple stumper final Jeopardy during Game 1 of the wild card match, your team actually had the lead going into Game 2 because you wisely only bet $12,000 of your $19,600 score after Double Jeopardy. Now, Game 2 did not feature the same high scores as Game 1, partially due to a big gamble by Alex Jacob of Team Buzzy. He lost $15,600 on a true daily double. Now, I've got to know, what was going through your mind when you saw Alex lose everything?
Let me take you a few seconds backwards. So I know Alex. I've known him pretty well for the last few years, pretty much ever since he started his run on Jeopardy. And the best way to explain this is if you were to say, go take $15,000 out of your bank account and bet on Alex Jacob getting a question right about Pulp Fiction, I would say, you fool, you're handing me $15,000. When I saw that clue, I was sitting in between my teammate, Alan, and I'm sitting next to Buzzy Cohen. I see that clue. I literally reach over to shake his hand and say, good luck in the final. And then Alex pauses. Oh, Alex is just drawing out the tension on a daily double because that's the thing that he does. And then he whiffs it. And I was like, did we just win? Like, how much is left on the board? Can we lock this up? And all of my logic and my reasoning just goes out of the window because I thought this match was over until that moment. And then sort of in seeing the window that opened when he got it wrong, it's like, oh, maybe we can kill off the game right now. And I literally go to Pam afterwards, did we kill off the game? And then Alan and Pam like, no, Colby, we did not kill off the game. The entire match is pretty much dependent on Austin getting Final Jeopardy right because Buzzy's team is wiped out. So it's like, okay, I will go up there and I will bet a small amount. And really, it's completely out of my hands. So knowing that it's completely out of my hands, it's like, please let this be the hardest history question. That was it. And it wasn't all that hard. I mean, I blew it because my mind wasn't in the right place. But, yeah, that was pretty much sheer insanity. And we just sort of petered our way into that final. When I saw that happen, I really couldn't believe it. It was very unexpected and not characteristic of Alex Jacob at all.
So, as probably expected by many viewers, Team Brad and Team Ken made it to the All-Star Games finals, and by winning the wild card match, yourself, Pam, and Alan, as Team Colby, were the third team to compete for the $1 million top prize. Now, the first game of the finals did not go in Team Colby's favor as you finished with $8,000 compared to Team Ken's $32,500 and Team Brad's $36,000. And by the end of the second game, Team Brad had a runaway, meaning they were going to be the $1 million winners. However, you played final on day 2, got the correct answer, and ended the 2-day match with $24,601, which Alex pointed out was Jean Valjean's prison number in Les Miserables. Now, whose idea was it to try and get your score to be 24601?
I think that Les Mis is really overrated and hackneyed, so it was certainly not me. But Pam and Alan both have some more refined taste, so to speak, so they definitely went with that. And afterwards, I did see one of the earlier numbers in the musical Look Down, where Javert repeatedly refers to Jean Valjean as 24601. I wish I would have had a more pertinent quote than Do You Hear the People Sing, because that was all I had. But yes, I definitely felt the weight come off my shoulders about being relentlessly pursued by Jeopardy's greatest champions. And if we're going to go out, we're going to go out in style. And I was pretty happy to have it end that way.
Well, Colby, we have reached my favorite portion of the game show. And as I said earlier, I've created a Jeopardy-inspired game just for you to play. It's time for the game of the day.
Game of the day.
All right.
Now, Colby, you've competed in 4 Jeopardy tournaments over the course of your Jeopardy career so far. The Teachers Tournament, the Tournament of Champions, the Battle of the Decades, and the All-Star Games. Well, I was inspired by those tournament names and decided to take the key words and use them as the basis for my own game creation. So, Colby, this game is called Taken from the Tournaments. Taken from the Tournaments. And here's how Taken from the Tournaments works. Colby, you'll face 4 Jeopardy-styled categories, all of which have names taken from the keywords of the tournaments you competed in, which are teachers, champions, decades, and star. The 4 categories consist of 4 clues of general knowledge trivia. The first 3 clues are worth 200 points, 400 points, and 600 points respectively. And the 4th clue is the daily double clue. For the daily double clue, you can risk any or all of the points you have accumulated for that category only, but be warned, it is the only clue for each category in which you can lose points for an incorrect response. You'll pick a category and play all 4 clues for that category in a row. And because these clues are all written Jeopardy style, you must answer in the form of a question. You'll bank your final point totals at the end of playing each category, and if you can accumulate a total of 4,000 points or more after all 4 categories are played, you will be deemed a winner. Those are all the rules, Colby. Are you ready to become victorious at yet another trivia game?
I'm ready to go.
Then let's play Taken from the Tournaments. 4,000 points to go, and here are your 4 categories. Famous teachers, champions in their own right, game shows by the decade. You'll have to name the decade in which the game shows mentioned originally premiered on television. And star power, with the word star in quotation marks, which means the word star will come up in each correct response. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's go reverse chronologically. So we'll start with stars.
Star power. Remember, star will come up in each correct response. And for 200 points, Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga were nominated for Best Actor and Best Actress Academy Awards for this 2018 movie remake.
What is A Star is Born?
That is correct for 200 points. Off to a fantastic start. For 400 points, this company's cup sizes include short, tall, grande, and venti.
What's Starbucks?
That is correct, and you have 600 points for this category so far. And to double that for 600 more points, this is one of the major symbols of Jewish identity and Judaism.
What is a Star of David?
That is correct. For another 600 points, you have 1,200 points for this category, and we've made it to the daily double of this category. So you can bet any or all of your 1,200 points.
Let's bet 800.
Alrighty, this will take you to 2,000 if you're right, or 400 if you're wrong. Category is star power, and here is the clue. Alex Trebek hosted this NBC game show from 1981 to 1982, and the new version of the show in 1983.
What is Battle Stars?
That is right for 800 points!
Woo! Quick story behind that. Ben Ingram, member of Team Julia. Technically, I met him when I was a senior in college because we played college ball. Both of our teams made it to nationals. And I wouldn't have gotten that unless I recalled this interaction. The draftees, the people that were on the board, all had a chance for 10 seconds to go say whatever they wanted. And Ben Ingram just walks up and says, I'm very happy to be on whatever show and Battle Stars. So he specifically mentioned the shows that Alex Trebek hosted immediately before playing Jeopardy. That's the only reason I got that right.
Yeah, he was saying how it's an honor to battle against you stars. I'm going to concentrate, and it's going to be a classic tournament in reference to Classic Concentration, which was another game show that he hosted.
Exactly. And he came out and he said that in, of course, this sort of aloof manner, because he has a very, very distinct sense of humor. And so, I had no idea what was going on. And then, oh, okay. Those are these shows that Alex Trebek hosted. All right, man, I'm halfway home.
You have 2,000 points. As you mentioned, you're halfway home. Which category next? Famous teachers, champions in their own right, game shows by the decade.
We'll do the decade.
All right. Now, remember, those 2,000 points, those are safe. Can't take those away. Once again, for this category, I'm going to name the titles of game shows. You have to tell me which decade those game shows first debuted on television. For 200 points, Deal or No Deal, Power of 10, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader?
What are the odds? The 2000s.
That is correct for 200 points. For 400 points, Press Your Luck, Win, Lose, or Draw, Blockbusters.
Okay, so Late 70s, early 80s. Late 70s, early 80s. I'm going to say, what are the 1980s?
You were torn between late 70s and early 80s, and you said the 80s. Well, I'm glad you did, because the 80s is correct.
That's very good game show banter right there. Okay.
Thank you. I've been practicing for years. For 600 points, Jeopardy, the match game, Hollywood Squares.
Okay, so you say Jeopardy, so this is going to be the Art Fleming Jeopardy, so I'm going to say, what are the 1960s?
You are correct again, Colby, and that could have been a tricky one because all of those game shows also had versions of them in the 80s.
There's also the idea that you have to get inside the mindset of the people writing the questions, and I know we've only been talking for about an hour and a half, but I figured you'd do that.
Well, through our conversation, I'm glad you can tell that my game show knowledge is up to par. Well, deja vu, we're right back where we were on the last category. You have 1,200 points, and it's time for the Daily Double Clue. Remember, you need 4,000 points to win, and right now you have 2,000 points banked. So you're going to try to win the game right now and bet 800 points?
Given how that last one went, I'm going to hit you with that 0 right now.
Well, since it is a daily double, you have to bet at least 5 points.
You're right, it is a daily double. I will bet 5.
So,
Arthur Chu method, yeah.
well, hopefully you won't say, I don't know.
I will give you a 10-year period in time and hope that I'm right.
Okay, so for 5 points, here is the clue. Tic-tac-doe, name that tune, treasure hunt.
What are the 1970s?
I fooled you a bit on that one. It's actually, what are the 1950s?
Yeah, okay, so these are lesser-known versions of those. But yeah. I did the right thing there in terms of betting.
You did. All these shows, though they had their most famous runs in the 70s, actually all premiered in the 50s. Brad fact! So you have 31.95, so you're only 8.05 away from a victory, and you have 2 categories left. Are you going to continue your trend?
Yeah, like I said, I don't need flair. I'm only playing against myself, and I'm only playing against the person who wrote these questions, so I'm just trying to hit 4,000. So I think we can do this.
Well, the person writing the questions, that would be me.
I understand, and it's been wonderful, and I'm glad that we get to cap this off doing this.
Well, I am too. Thank you so much for saying that. Here we go. Champions in their own right. That's where you're going to go with. And for 200 points, she won the U.S. Open in tennis 3 years in a row, from 2012 to 2014.
Who is S. Williams?
Yes, S. Williams, or Serena Williams, is correct.
Okay.
For 400 points, in 2014, Anthony Brooks set the Guinness World Record for solving the most of these underwater with a single breath.
Solving, so what are Rubik's Cubes?
Well, you solved that clue correctly. It is Rubik's Cube.
You can get a gig doing this. You're doing great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. My dream in life is to host a game show, so I appreciate the acknowledgement that I'm doing this well. This is a big one. You have 600 points in this category. This is worth 600 points, so technically if you get this and you don't fool around in the Daily Double Clue, you will have won this game.
Oh, trust me, I will not.
Here we go. 600 points, category champions in their own right. This General Hospital star samba'd and foxtrotted her way to win the first season of Dancing with the Stars.
Ooh, General Hospital? Well, I have no idea who's on General Hospital. So you got me there, so I'm going to say, who's Wagner?
No, that's incorrect. Who is Kelly Monaco?
Yeah, that wasn't it. Okay.
Well, you have 600 points in this category. You need 805 points to win the game, and this is the Daily Double Clue. So I don't know how you want to play this. You still have another category after this one in case something fails here. What's going to be your bet, Colby?
Okay, so if I need 805, so you know what? I will bet 205.
So you're going to try to end it right here.
Yeah.
Here we go. For the win. He ate his first hot dog on the corner of Surf and Stillwell on July 4th, 2006.
Who's Kobayashi?
Unfortunately, that's incorrect. Who is Joey Chestnut? So you ended that category with 395 points, which means your total is now 3,590.
I just need 2 of these. Okay.
Famous teachers is the category for 200 points. She is best known for being the teacher of Helen Keller.
Who's Sullivan?
That is correct, Anne Sullivan. So this is it. Here we go. If you get this right, you will have won the game. Bueller, Is there really any other piece of information I need to give you to name this actor who played the famous Ferris Bueller's Day Off teacher?
Oh, well, that's fitting with game show hosts as well. Who's Ben Stein?
That is correct, which means, Colby, you have won this game of Taken from the Tournaments.
Woo!
Of course, you're referring to Win Ben Stein's Money is the game show that Ben Stein hosted.
That also has a special place in my heart because, the whole premise of being a game show host and then actually going out and competing against the competitors, that's the only time I've seen that happen.
And what you just said is why Win Ben Stein's Money is definitely a favorite game show of mine. Just for shiggles, you want to try the next two?
Sure.
This is the 600-point clue. I wonder if the 6th graders got any makeup tutorials when he taught Harlem students before becoming the Demon.
I don't know this at all.
Who is Gene Simmons?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. He was a school teacher before he was a professional musician.
And his character of Kiss is called the Demon. Brad fact!
I've seen Kiss Live. I should know more about that.
You have 600 points for this category, and we've reached the final Daily Double clue. Want to bet 5 points?
I will bet 5.
Okay. Here is the Daily Double clue for 5 points. He didn't teach in Mayberry, North Carolina, but this actor did teach music and drama in Goldsboro, North Carolina.
Who's Griffith?
Andy Griffith is right for another 5 points, which means you have 605 for this round, and your total number of points for the entire game is 4,195. And once again, congratulations on winning Take It From the Tournaments.
Woo! That was great. I wholeheartedly enjoyed it. Like I said, you have a good understanding of what good trivia is, and you have pretty good game show host banter. So I hope to hear that you land some sort of gig related to the industry in the upcoming years. Good to hear from you, kid.
Thank you so much. That truly means a lot. And that was the game of the day, Taken from the Tournaments. Taken from the Tournaments. Thank you so much, Colby. This has been such a treat having you on the game show to talk about your Jeopardy career so far. And I hope it is just a so far, because I'd love to see you back on my screen in the near future.
Yeah, and hey, if you ever run out of new game show people to interview, I'd be happy to come back, because that was great.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate it. And yes, you always have an open invitation, whether to talk or if you just want to play another game.
Cool.
Well, thank you again, Colby. This has truly been an honor to speak with you, going way back to my sophomore year of high school, and now, finally, 7 years later, we get to chat about Jeopardy. So thank you so much for joining me on the game show.
All right, anytime.
Alrighty, take care, Colby.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye. Well, just like Jeopardy's 35th season, the 35th episode of the game show must sadly come to an end. However, in both cases, that just means number 36 is just around the corner. My thanks once again to Jeopardy Teachers Tournament winner, Jeopardy Tournament of Champions winner, as well as Jeopardy All-Star Games captain, Colby Burnett, for being my guest today. Now, Colby isn't the first Jeopardy All-Star I've had on the game show. All-Star Games winning captain, Brad Rutter, and his winning teammate, David Madden, have also graced the airwaves on episodes of their own. In fact, Brad is even a 2-time guest on the game show. So if you want to check out those episodes, and between you and me, I think you should, go ahead and log on to www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/the game show. That's www.soundcloud.com/Bradley_Clarke, that's BRADLEY_CLARKE/sets/the game show. Plus, don't forget to like The Game Show Starring Bradley Clarke on Facebook and follow The Game Show Starring Bradley Clarke on Twitter using the handle @TheGameShowBC and #TheGameShow. And of course, be sure to tune in next time for another exciting episode of The Talk Show, all about the world of television game and competition shows, The Game Show. I'm Bradley Clarke, the Bradster, and I've got to go study some stuff for Jeopardy's upcoming tournament in which I'm participating in, the Radio Personalities Tournament, Yep, I'm going up against Ryan Seacrest and Howard Stern, so I've got to train my brain big time. Bye for now. All of the Jeopardy! Sound bites are courtesy of Jeopardy!
This edition of The Game Show was created and produced by Bradley Clarke and was recorded at the WRHU studios. This is Austin Angelo speaking.
The Game Show is a Bradley Clarke production. Get your game on.